Says the Holy Mishnah, Perek Rishon, Mei Masai Koyden Shema Be'arvin. So there's a mitzvah to say Shema. From the Torah, where do we learn that from? We say it every day. V'shach becha uvkumecha. Right? When you lie down and when you rise up. That means... Yeah. In terms of Sefer Mitzvahs.
Yeah.
So now the question is, what exactly are the times for this mitzvah? And obviously we're starting with the nighttime obligation, because b'shach becha uvkumecha. What comes first? The night and then the day. So be'arvin, what is the earliest time we can fulfill the mitzvah Shema? In the evening. So mishash ha'kohanim nichnasin le'echol bitrumasan. From the time that the kohanim who had become tamei and went to the mikveh that day go home to eat their truma, which basically is nightfall. Right? That's the definition. We're going to define it as nightfall. And the time for reciting Shema at night goes, so mishash ha'kohanim nichnasin le'echol bitrumasan ad soif ha'ashmura harishona, until the end of the first watch. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, these are the words of Rabbi Eliezer. V'chachamim oimrim, chachamim say, ad chatzos. Chachamim say, until midnight. Rabbi Gamliel oimer, ad sheyale amud hashachar. It may be recited until dawn. So 3 opinions in regards to the first, we say, the end. I'm sorry, the earliest time you could say it, right? We're answering two questions. Number one, when's the earliest time to say it? By the way, the Tosfos in the actual, you can see how long the Tosfos is right there. Goes all the way down, mamish all the way down, and it's an extremely relevant and applicable Tosfos. Literally, what happens in many shuls to be able to daven mincha and then ma'ariv right away, even before nightfall. That's the whole inyan of the Tosfos. How's that possible? How do we do that? How are we fulfilling Shema? Midei, do you have to repeat Shema again? Maybe Kriya Shema Shalamita is going to be Yoitzi you because you didn't really say it. It's a whole people there.
It's interesting because this idea of starting when the Kohanim finish their service and go tovel means there must be a time that the Kohanim finish.
The time that the Kohanim finish, not...
The Kohanim finish, tovel, and come home to eat.
Yeah,
That's the time when you can start.
Yes.
Which means that there must be an interval, like a time interval, that they finish their work, kind of like clocking out.
Yeah. But that's not. But it's. I don't think it's about the work. It's about in the case that a kohen who was tamei, right? A kohen who was tamei. When can he? And he went to the mikveh that day, right? At what point can he then eat truma? Only by tzeis hakochavim. That's the question of the Gemara. That's the question of the Gemara. Good. Lady, see? It's a long time, but you're good. That's exactly the question of the Gemara. Just tell me, I'm asking you, what time is the earliest to say Shema? So answer me what? Nightfall. Tell me Shkia, tell me Tzeis, tell me Chatzos. The answer of the Gemara is that it's going to come try and teach us another thing. But let's see. So now, we've answered 2 questions. Number 1, nobody's disagreeing in the earliest time you can say it, right? Which we have not defined that earliest time. It just says, we have not, I'm saying to you, it is nightfall, right? We're assuming that it is nightfall, but we don't know that. We don't know what time. So when exactly do the Kohanim go eat their truma? When they've completed their...
It's arbitrary.
Yeah, correct? So now, that's question number 1. Question number 2, we answered 3 opinions. The end of the first watch, Chatzos, and Amud HaShachar. And done. That's the until you can say it. There was a story that happened with Rabbi Gamliel's sons. And they came from a party. They asked a question to their father, the Rav. No, we didn't say Shema. We were partying with Fabringing. Yeah? Can we daven ma'ariv or not? Amr lahem. Yeah? And obviously this was after Chatzos. So Amr lahem im loy ala amud hashachar chayavim atem likros. If dawn has not arisen yet, right? If the morning sun has not arisen yet, chayavim, or not the morning sun, but dawn before, chayavim atem likros. It's not optional. You're obliged to still say it. You have not exempted your obligation of saying Shema. And not only this, any declaration of the Chachamim that when they say about a mitzvah that you only have until Chatzos to do it, the mitzvah, if you have not completed your obligation, you're still obliged until Amud HaShachar. For example, Hekter Chalavim Beivarim, mitzvah sin ad sheyal Amud HaShachar. The mitzvah for the burning of the fats on the various limbs of a korban, the mitzvah is that it could still be burnt until Amud HaShachar. He's giving just examples. And all those offerings that may be eaten for only one day and the night that follows, the time of the mitzvah to eat the meat actually goes until dawn. If that's the case, why did the Chachamim, the second opinion of the Mishnah, say until midnight? In order to prevent or to push away somebody from sin. That what? We know ourselves, we get lazy, right? And I'm not in the mood, and I already fell asleep. So one of these reasons why we shouldn't eat before we daven Ma'ariv unless you have a kviyas, right? That at the end of the day I can get tired from my meal, and that's it. I lose the mitzvah. So therefore they made a safeguard until Chatzos. Is it really till Chatzos? No. The definition of nighttime is until Amud HaShachar, and therefore b'shachbecha, as the Gemara is going to elucidate, b'shachbecha is when you lie down. When you lie down is what? Is when people begin to lie down, or the whole time people are lying down, the whole time people are sleeping, which is what? That time frame between whenever evening starts, which we have not defined yet, until the morning. Yeah.
It shouldn't be that. It should be until you wake up.
Yeah.
Because when you lie down...
When do people wake up?
Because the next instruction is when you wake up.
Fantastic, yes.
So it has to be until then.
Very good. But that's the whole next section of the Gemara. The whole next section of the Gemara is defining ufkumecha. And when is that? And this is, by the way, it's very...
Ufkumecha, that's saying the time when it starts, ufkumecha. But I'm saying, because b'shachbecha is followed by ufkumecha, then b'shachbecha has to extend until ufkumecha.
Correct. We have defined one of them. Ad she'ala Amud HaShachar is the definition of b'shachbecha. The question is now, hold on, what if I wake up before? So then what's ufkumecha then? And can there be an overlap? And by the way, what you're asking right now is literally a nafkamina in halacha today. We have different time zones. If I wake up and Amud HaShachar, Alois we say, right? Alois HaShachar, Amud HaShachar is what time? Is let's say 3:30 a.m., okay? But can I put on tefillin then? Can I daven Shemona Esrei then? Can I say Krishma? Right? Can I put on tzitzis? Can I make a bracha on tzitzis? All of those things you cannot do. It's still the definition. Even though we're saying Ad Yala Amud HaShachar, there's still a lapse of time that you're not allowed to do those mitzvahs that are only obligated during the day. And b'diavad, if you do it, you're yoitzi. But it's a whole machlekes. And that's tefillah because it's derabanan. But deraisa, if you put on tefillin before, it's like putting on tefillin at night, you're not yoitzi. Putting tzitzis at night, you're not yoitzi. So at what point is the transition of this like twilight zone between night and day, which the Gemara discusses? In halachic terms, it's called Misha Yakir, right? That's that famous idea, Misha Yakir. That person is able to do those positive commandments when he's able to recognize, Misha Yakir, a person is able to recognize the difference between the tchelis and the white of the tzitzis. Right? That's one. Or Misha Yakir, a person is able to recognize his friend's face from a certain distance. Right? At night, meaning to say that the light of the sun. We're not talking about the. What's the next one? Not Amud HaShachar. The next one.
What?
Not Alois. The next one. Alois Misha Yakir. Nates. Yeah. Nates Hachama. It's fully bright. We're not. That's clear. That's the whole next chapters in the Gemara, speaking not about Krishna anymore, but about Shemona Esrei.
In the olden days, when you get up at Nates HaShachar, they get up at Amud HaShachar.
Correct. That's why it's not even a question here. You could for sure say Shema by that time. The question is, what's the earliest time to say Shemona Esrei? That's the whole next section. Okay, Zog the Gemara. Says the Holy Gemara, the Mishnah said that a person may recite the nighttime Shema from the time Kayanim, who were Tamei and purified themselves, come home to eat Truma. Frag the Gemara, which is also a frag of Levi Teleshevsky. Mikdi, what's Mikdi mean? Since, he translates here now. Now let us see. Yeah? Since what? When are Koyanim, yeah? Mikdi Koyanim, Emas Ka'achlu Truma. When are Koyanim who were Tamei and immersed themselves in a mikvah allowed to eat Truma? Mishas Tzeisa Kechavim. From the time that the stars appear in the evening. Yeah? So therefore what? Mishas Tzeitzekechavim listening. Mishas Tzeitzekechavim. If that's the case, then teach that. What should the Mishnah say? Read the Mishnah again. When should a person start eating? When can a person begin to say Shema? At night. Mishas Tzeitzekechavim. And you did that already with Alais. You did that with the other 3 times. You did that with Atseif Hashmuda Rishayna, Chatzais, and Amud HaShachar. So just do that with the first time. So, and for the Gemara, so why does the Mishnah give the time in such a roundabout way? And for the Gemara, the Mishnah says at the time for Shema, this way is to teach us something else in passing. Milsa agav urcha kamash malan. Yeah? Milsa agav urcha. Agav, you know agav? Yeah, agav is like a tangential, right? I want to teach you something tangentially. So what do we want to learn? That when our koyanim who were tameh permitted to eat truma when the stars appear in the evening. And it is teaching us, what's it teaching us? That the waiting for the atonement offering that some tameh people have to bring the day after their immersion does not prevent a kohen from eating truma. Okay, this is called michusrei kapara. I have to see the note. It's for, there are certain types of tuma, for example, zav and mitzaira, just last week's parsha, right? A zav and a mitzaira, from which a person does not fully become tahor until he brings an offering the day after his immersion. So now, Tuesday, there's a 3-step process, okay? There's the last day, let's say tzaras, yeah? That I'm tummy for. It's the 7th day of my quarantine, okay, or my cleansing. On that 7th day, I go to mikvah. Okay, everybody's used to women going to mikvah at night, right, for nida, but that's really only a gzeiras hakosov that only women go to mikvah at night. All the other tuma and tara, the koyanim or a corpse tuma. Let's say a person has to go to the Beis Hamikdash, right? All of them, they have to toivel during the day.
Why is that?
I don't know. Why the difference? I don't know.
Okay.
But at the end of the so now you have, let's see. So now you have, I think it's a zav, a mitzaira. What are the 4 things? There's 4 things mechuser kapara. No, who knows Rambam well? Zava. I think yoledes and mitzaira. I could be wrong, but a yoledes and mitzaira. Those 4 things. A zav and a zava is basically a certain discharge or emission from the male or female body part that is beyond your. It wasn't as a result of sexual intercourse. It was like a more spontaneous thing. In English, they say that a zava is like gonorrhea. It's like this, but that's regarding blood.
Not a country.
Not
a country.
Gonorrhea. That's yeah, maybe. So what's he saying? There are certain types of tuma, for example, a zav or mitzaira, from which a person does not fully become tahor until he brings an offering the day after his immersion. Okay, so he immerses on Tuesday day. It is now Tuesday night. And he has to wait until the next day to bring his korban. Until he brings the offering, he is called a mechusar kippurim, one who is lacking atonement. Chaser kapara. And he may not eat from a korban. Our Mishnah says that the time for the nighttime Shema is the same as the time koyanim may eat truma. Again, the question of the Gemara was, just tell me tzeisa kechavim. Why are you telling me another dvart? Because in this way, our Mishnah teaches us that although a kohen who is a mechusar kippurim may not eat from a korban, he may eat truma the night after his immersion, even though he will not bring his offering until the next day. So again, let's say this kohen was a matzaira or he was a zav. So you may think that he is still categorized as an individual who cannot eat kachim, who cannot eat holy sanctified objects until the next day, until he brings his korban. Truma is different. Truma is a special gift that the koyanim receive, and once they toivel in the mikvah, the day of the final, in the finale of in the conclusion of their impurity, they would be able to eat truma at night. And that's what the Mishnah is coming to teach us. I'll say it again. In this way, our Mishnah teaches us that although a kohen who is a mechusar kippurim may not eat from a korban. He may eat from truma the night after his immersion, even though he will not bring his offering until the next day. The fact that he has not yet brought his atonement offering does not prevent him from eating truma. And therefore, the Mishnah wants to teach us, in a roundabout way, this other din, that he wants to say, Mishas shakoinim nichnasin le'echol b'trumasan. Yeah.
This seemingly isn't this kohenim tuma not related to those four things? Isn't it to kohenim who become tomei in the process of their service?
No. Why? Why? Where does it say that?
It doesn't say that.
It doesn't say it.
Yeah, that they become fully Torah when the stars come out.
Yes.
In which case,
he's permitted to eat truma.
Right. In which case,
all of them can get the same type of tuma. It's just a matter of what restrictions.
But wouldn't he?
There's no special type of tumor that only Kohanim can get. Just that they're restricted
yes,
from doing more things.
No, he's saying paraduma, yeah.
If they come in contact with a dead person,
everyone who comes in contact with, yes, of course.
But I'm saying for them, they just need to go to mikvah and then they can serve.
Well, they need to wait 7 days. They need the sprinkling of the ashes.
Right.
Maybe it's a bigger issue for a
Thank you so much.
Everyone has to go through the same process of purification to become tahar. Maybe a regular person like Yisrael has no nafkamina because he's not eating truma, but he couldn't eat kachim, he couldn't eat a carbon if he was tamei. The same would apply. So for kayin, it's just he can eat truma, it's a special din.
Right. And I do believe that he's specifying this individual of a zav or mitzaira. By the way, why doesn't it say the other ones?
What do you mean?
I know I'm not trying to sound overly smart.
It only says mechusar kapara?
No. It only gave the example of what type here. There are certain types of tuma, for example, zav or mitzaira, from which a person does not become fully tar until he brings an offering the day after his immersion. I told you there's 4 things.
Talking about a woman.
There you go. It's simple. Because a zava in a yoledes, a woman who has that discharge, or yoledes, a woman who gave birth, they're also under the category of mechusar kipurim, but a kohen cannot be because it's not a woman. So therefore, it's only the 2 things. So again, it's a very, very specific case. The Mishnah is teaching us in a very specific case that you have a kohen who contracted saras, or you have a kohen who became a zav, and he now is on his 7th day of cleansing, and he goes to the mikveh that day. You may think what? That he's a mechusar kapara, and he's not allowed to eat kachim. V'haraya, what's the proof? That he's only able to eat from his korban the next day. What about that night? You can eat truma. Truma is allowed. Truma is a different category in the realm of kachim, which again, if a Yisrael eats truma, that's like horrible, right? But in the realm of kachim, if he eats it that night, it's totally fine. That's what it's trying to teach us. That this law, and it's teaching us that the waiting for the atonement offering that some Tamei people have to bring the day after their immersion does not prevent the kohen from eating truma. Kidetanya, how do we know? This law was taught to us in a brisa. Uba Hashemesh v'tar, the Torah says regarding a kohen who becomes Tamei and immerses himself to be purified from his tumah, and when the sun comes down and the day clears out of the sky. Okay? Uba, let's translate each word. Uba Hashemesh v'tar sounds like what? And the sun comes and purifies. That's literally Uba, and it comes, Hashemesh, the sun, v'tar, and becomes pure. But what does it mean? I think Rashi explains to us. And when the sun comes down and the day clears out of the sky, meaning the daylight disappears completely. So Uba Hashemesh v'taher means as the sun goes down and becomes purified, so to speak, from daylight. What does it mean to be purified from daylight? I'm pushing away daylight and now it's nighttime. Then he may eat from the holy foods. That's a pasuk straight from the Torah. From this we learn that waiting for his sun to set prevents him from eating truma, but waiting for his atonement offering, which is brought on the next day, does not prevent him from eating truma. Meaning, at the very least, again, I'll say it in Hebrew, as long as the sun is still in the sky on the 7th day of his cleansing, on the 7th day of his purification, then he can't eat truma. But if the sun has now set, he could eat truma. What can't he eat? That what? That even though he still doesn't, he still has not brought his korban the next day, he could still eat truma that night.
So the Mishnah could have said names like
Yeah, it could also say that. Umimai. Now he's now gonna scrutinize this. Umimai dahai uba hashemesh bias hashemesh. The high vitar tar yoima. It's interesting. The daf in the Ein Yaakov it says now we went to daf base. Yeah. The Gemara asks how the Brisa knows to interpret the verse that way. Hold on, 1 second. The verse is not clear. Maybe uba hashemesh. Doesn't uba hashemesh means the sun comes? When you say the sun comes, what are you trying to say? The sun rises. How do you know uba hashemesh v'tahir? Maybe v'tahir means that the darkness of the night is now cleansed, is now purified. Uba hashemesh is now sunlight. So how can you tell me uba hashemesh v'tahir? No, it means that the purification of the day. It's very, very abstract. Let's see. On what basis do you interpret this expression? And when the sun comes means the setting of the sun. And this expression, vitar, means the light of the day clears out. The daylight will completely disappear, from which you derive that a kohen may eat truma even before bringing his atonement offering. Perhaps, Dilma, perhaps, bias oyrehu. Perhaps when the verse says, when the sun comes, it doesn't mean the setting of the sun, rather means the coming of the light, when the sun comes up the next morning. You hear what he's saying? Hold on. Why are you telling me? He's allowed to eat truma at night, but he's not allowed to eat his carbon until the next day. Maybe even truma he's not allowed to eat until the next day. Because if you interpret it uba shemesh v'tar, that he cannot eat truma until the sun rises, so then he has to wait that night also.
Until the sun comes. Yeah.
Yeah. And if so, so now dilma bias oyrehu umay v'tar tar gavra. And if so, what would v'taher mean? It would mean that the person should make himself tar by bringing his atonement offering. You hear? When is a person able to become vitar? Let's go back. The Gemara wanted to teach us uba shemesh v'taher is a reference to the night, the sun setting, and the night becoming cleansed of the day. It's a very poetic way of saying it. V'taher means tahir yoima, that the yoim is now tahir from its yoima-ness. That the day is now cleansed of the sun's light and is now entering into darkness. Okay? But he's saying, hold on. Say ba hashemesh. Don't tell me it's the sun setting, it's the sun rising. V'taher gavrahu. And v'taher is not a reference to the day cleansing itself from daylight, but rather the individual person, the gavra, cleansing himself from his impurity. When? Only when it's daylight the next morning. That's a much better interpretation. It's a much more sound interpretation. Perhaps when the verse says, when the sun comes, it does not mean the setting of the sun. And if so, what would the word v'taher mean? Translate the word v'taher means the person, v'tar gavrahu. But that the person should make himself tar by bringing his atonement offering. And again, v'taher doesn't mean in this context what we think v'taher means, which is going to the mikvah. Why? Because he already went to the mikvah that day. He already went to the mikvah that day, Tuesday. Tuesday is his last day of purification. He went to the mikvah that day. He's now mischusar kapara, which means that he's not allowed to eat kachim till when? Till the next day that he has to now bring his karban. And only once he brings his karban, that's the finale of his. That's the true finale of his purification process. Yeah.
Kind of like when it says v'taher, it's just like in English words, it's just saying like v'taher.
And he should become.
He should become. In other words, the insinuation is, and he should bring the offering.
Yes. When? Uba Hashemesh, the next day. Thus, the verse would be teaching the very opposite, that the kohen may eat truma only after he offers his atonement offering. And for the Gemara, Amar Rabba bar Rav Shila. Rabba bar Rav Shila says, Imkei lemakra v'yitar. If that's the case, if the pasuk was referring to a human being, i.e. the kohen, then it would use the terminology v'yitar, and he should purify himself with his offering. So why does it say my v'taher taher yoima? Taher yoima. What does the Torah indicate by using the word v'taher, which more commonly means simply will become pure? It means the light of the day clears out. For this is what people commonly say, that when night falls, yeah. This is the common verbiage of people. It means the light of the day clears out. The sun has set. Right? Erev shimsha. The sun has set. And the light of the day has cleared out. Right? Like daka. Daka means to cleanse, to purify. Yeah.
What's the difference? Sorry, between shall become pure and will become pure.
V'taher and v'yithar. V'taher is v'yithar is a more grammatical appropriate reference to the individual becoming pure, as opposed to v'taher means cannot mean grammatically that the person will become. It's something else becoming pure. V'yithar, and he will become pure.
One's a verb, the one's like
V'taher. Here, he says here, the person should purify himself with his offering. The verse should say instead the word v'yitar, which is more common way of saying a command to become pure. Right? When you say v'yitar, Oba Hashemesh v'yitar, and he, the kohen, will become pure. I'm commanding you to become pure. As opposed to v'taher is more passive. Right? And therefore you can't say, a good word, the kohen is not passively becoming pure. The kohen has to actively become pure through a korban. So what is passively becoming pure? Daylight, right? As poetic as it sounds, it says that when the day is clear, when the light of the day clears out, the sun has set. Look at number 2 I have here. The Aramaic word idaki is a translation of the Hebrew word taher, both of which have the literal meaning of purified or cleared. The Gemara says that the Torah is using the same expression people use when they want to say that the night has fallen. When people would say the night has fallen, a poetic way of saying it's now evening is that the sun has set and it's cleansed itself, it's purified itself, it's cleared out daylight. B'mayrava, let's end off with this. B'mayrava, the Gemara notes that in Eretz Yisrael, they arrived at this conclusion without knowing the explanation of Rabba bar Rav Shila. Right, Rabba bar Rav Shila is the one who says about v'yitar versus v'taher. Right, so in the West, Rabba bar Rav Shila lo yishmi'u lahu. We didn't hear this vart. Ubao le mibaya, and they simply asked this question about the meaning of the verse. When the verse uses this expression, and when the sun comes, does it mean setting of the sun? And what does v'taher mean? Right? They ask this same question. And what does the v'tar mean? It means that the person should make himself tar. Subsequently, they resolved that the question from a brisa, since it states in a brisa cited below, what? Simin l'davar. A sign for knowing this matter of when koyanim, who were tamei, may begin eating truma, is tzeisek echavim shmamina biashim shehu omay v'tar tar yoima. That when we use the terminology tzeisek echavim, the appearance of the sun, the appearance of the stars, you can learn from this that when the verse says when the sun comes, it means the setting of the sun. And what does v'tar means? It means the light of the day clears out. Basically, they came to the same conclusion without the vart of Rabba bar Rav Shiloi. How? I'm just interested to know where they got the vart tzeisek echavim. Does the Torah say tzeisek echavim?
It has the price here. Yeah.
Where do you see?
It says the price is cited below.
Maybe this is the brisa, a sign for knowing the matter.
But where is the price?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. No, let's conclude. Amar Rabbi Yossi says, "Bein hashmashos keheref ayin zeh nichnas zeh yotzi ivi efshar lamed alav." The Gemara just spoke of night as the beginning of tzeisek echavim, the appearance of the stars. There is a time just before this called bein hashmashos. What's bein hashmashos? Literally between the suns, between the days, between the end of the one day and the beginning of the next. In English, we call that twilight, right? The twilight zone, the twilight period about which we are uncertain whether it is part of the day or part of the night. So the Gemara mentions the view of Rabbi Yossi. How long does bein hashmashos last? At what point is the true transition of day to night or night to day? On Rabbi Yossi, the blink of an eye. It is a short moment immediately before the appearance of the stars, when this one, the night, enters and this, the day, leaves, and it's impossible to determine about this short moment itself whether it is part of the day or part of the night. Let's look at number 5. According to Rabbi Yossi, the time between sunset and this moment just before the appearance of the stars is considered definitely part of the day. However, the Gemara in Shabbos 34b also mentions the view of Rabbi Yehuda that Bein HaShoshes is a longer time, which lasts from when the sun has set completely until the appearance of the stars. This entire time is the period about which we do not know whether it's day or night. Again, this is the source, the nafkamin al-halacha of where I don't know, not Rashi, but Rabbeinu Tam, that what? You could daven mincha much later. Chaver Shekoyach.
It has to be other Rishonim that argue. But it's Rashi that argue.